Okay, we are going to have a chat today about the elections, and we are going to have a chat with someone who has just gone through them. So a very warm welcome to Vanessa Hudson, who is the leader of the Animal Welfare Party in Britain.
Hi, Peter. Nice to join you today. Thank you for having me.
So Vanessa, tell me, how did the elections go for you in Britain?
Yeah, so we had local elections here in the UK, and we decided to stand in London and in one region in Scotland, Lothian region. So in
Where is that exactly, the Lothian region?
Lothian region is the area around Edinburgh.
I see. Yeah.
So in London, I stood in the mayoral election, and we also had a party list in the assembly election. And the thinking behind that was that if I stood in the mayoral election, we would draw more attention for our cause, and then we might get more votes in the assembly election. And the assembly is the body that holds the mayor to account in London. So I stood in the mayoral election. It was the first time that we've done that, and I got around 16,000 first preference votes, but I did a lot better with second preference votes. I got around 63,000 second preference votes. So overall, a really large number of votes. And then the effect that that had in the London Assembly election, which is a separate election, but held on the same day, this time we got just over 44,000 votes. Now, for us, that was an increase on last time we stood, 2016, because last time we stood, we got around 25,000 votes, and yet this time we got just over 44,000 votes. So we didn't quite double out the number of votes that we got, but we were getting on the way to doubling the votes. And that took us to now we're at 1.7% of the vote. So although we didn't win a seat, because we would need 5% of the vote to win a seat in the London Assembly, we're definitely on the trajectory now, we think, of getting there to winning a seat. And so for us, it was a great result. And what it meant that day, last Thursday, the day elections took place, we received overall in London over 125,000 votes, which for our party is kind of a record number of votes that we've received in a single day.
Wow, then, that's amazing. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
We were really thrilled. And then on the same day in Scotland, the Scottish Parliament elections were taking place. So we were standing there in Lothian region. It's the first time that we've stood in Lothian region. Last time we stood in Scotland, we stood in Glasgow region. This time we stood in Lothian region. And we received 2,392 votes, which is around 0.6% of the vote. So that's, for the first time that we've ever stood somewhere, that is a really brilliant result.
Exactly.
And, it shows that there's a kind of base level of support for these policies. Even though we're not that very well known in Lothian region, and we still had some feedback coming in from people on the day saying, I went to the polling booth, I saw your party on the ballot paper, I'd never heard of you before, but I decided to vote for you, and it's wonderful to know you exist. We're still getting feedback like that in the Lothian region. And it's just great to hear that, because, as small parties, you can't always reach all the electorate that you want to. You don't get tons of media coverage, for example. And so to know that people are finding us and actually just straight away voting for us, it's really heartwarming.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say that the start of new party is one of the most challenging things in building a party. But if you were to, if I would ask you now, what do you think? And because it's a very nice progress you've made there in London, what do you think is, for an animal welfare party, is the biggest challenge to keep the results progressing? What for you is the toughest challenge to make things move in the right direction, keep it moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I think really the aim for us is to stay relevant, to keep talking about issues that are in voters' minds right now. And I think because of the pandemic, I think there's been a new focus on our lifestyles, the way that we're exploiting animals and the environment, and kind of the role that has had in leading to this zoonotic pandemic, but also how it might lead to the next one as well. And so right now, I feel like we've been the only party here in the UK talking about the role that animal agriculture has in causing pandemics, and how if we want to prevent the next pandemic, we have to really look at our lifestyles and lead on a shift towards plant-based diets. And although our Green Party has done very well here in this election, I don't feel that they're yet talking about this issue, and I haven't seen an appetite for other parties to even touch this issue yet. And for me, it's quite surprising, because I would have thought for any politician, before you start talking about how we recover from this pandemic, how we get business going again, etc., the number one thing you should do is be thinking, how do we ever make sure we're never in this situation again? And yet we know that the number one thing we have to do is look at our lifestyles, our diet, our treatment of the natural world and animals, and rein in our excessive behavior there. And no other political parties really seem to be talking about that, apart from the animal party. So I think in the years ahead, we will be relevant, because we do have an appetite to discuss that issue. We're not afraid to discuss that issue. So sadly, because I think, you know, the next pandemic is on the cards, unless we kind of get a hang on that, really, that we will continue to be relevant, because we're not afraid to talk about that issue.
Totally agree with you. And in Belgium, we're seeing very similar reactions from the other political parties, and they're only fighting or handling the symptoms of the current crisis, but nobody is reflecting or even taking action towards prevention of future pandemics. So, as you say, we are and will be even more relevant in the future. Maybe one last thing for you, Vanessa. If you think back on this campaign, what was for you the most epic moment of your campaign, or maybe of the elections? The thing that you would say in 5 years from now, wow, if I remember the last campaign, it's this or that thing that comes to my mind.
Well, I think it is the issue around us talking about pandemics and talking about how we're going to prevent them, and obviously talking about, at this exact moment in time, we find ourselves kind of, yes, we're emerging, if we're lucky, we're emerging from this zoonotic pandemic, but we also, in the background, have also been fighting the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis, and how we've come at this point where they're all three converging. We've got these three huge crises to confront now: health, climate, and biodiversity. And we really have this choice. Are we going to continue along this road we've been going on, or are we going to do something new? And, you know, this has been the thrust of our campaign over the past few weeks. And I guess the nicest thing really has been the feedback from people who've come across that and who've said, you know what, you're right. I wasn't never thinking of voting for you, but I've watched your video, or I looked at your website, and I looked at actually the link between health, biodiversity, climate, and kind of what you're saying about lifestyles, and I agree with you, and I'm going to vote for you. That's the nicest feedback you could have, really, that we've sort of made people think about these issues and drawn attention to the fact that it's what we're doing here, you know, that plays a role in pandemics and zoonotic disease spread. We're involved in this, and we also have the ability to stop this happening as well. So that's the nicest feedback, in a way, is people realizing the links.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for this chat.
Thank you, Peter.
It was very nice to have a talk with you. And I should say, let's make one front between all different animal welfare parties existing in Europe and beyond. And if we work together, we will be even stronger. Thank you very much.
Agree. Yes, it's a worldwide issue we're confronting, so we must work together. Yes, thank you.
Exactly. Bye-bye, thanks.
Bye, thank you.